The Toronto Blue Jays have hit rock bottom as following what was one of the most devastating losses of the season. The Jays are in serious trouble as they have a massive problem with not only the team, but the way the team is constructed and one particular issue that is going to plague them for the entire year if they don't fix it and fix it fast. I'll break down exactly what that issue is and discuss what it means going forward, as well as break down some interesting comments from John Schneider revealing the state of the Blue Jays right now as they are in the trenches. So stay tuned for all that in this episode, folks. Before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Your guys' support has been great, even though the Jays are scuffling. So if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed, about 70%, and want to hit that subscribe button, it would mean the world to myself here on the channel, as we are on the road to the big goal, of course, 20,000 subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to go over today. And obviously, the Jays are in an interesting spot. They unfortunately lost yesterday. It's a late, West Coast game, and they lost in devastating fashion. But the loss, the loss is the loss. There's going to be a lot of losses throughout the year, but it's the way that they're losing, and one thing in particular that is absolutely killing this team. But they have hit rock bottom, and the Jays now are in a very bad spot. Several games below 500. There is still time, of course, for them to come back. The season is very early, and I'm not in a full-blown panic mode yet. But as it pertains to, being rock bottom, they are all but there. They are 4-11 in their last 15 games. This is since the 12-8 start they had of the year, where they were winning games. Everything felt good. They can't hit. The bullpen is gas, and there's no help on the way. This might feel like rock bottom, but where's the light at the end of the tunnel? It's an interesting point here from Jay's views of the six. So 4-11 in the last 15. That in itself is very bad. Now, the one, I guess, thing you could point to is the extremely tough schedule that the Jays are facing right now in the months of April and May. But at some point, you're going to have to just win the games that are in front of you. And you were hoping to get out of April at 500. You didn't really, do that. And then, of course, you needed to sweep the Angels. This series, you lose game one because of the bullpen, but most importantly because of the offense. I'm not going to blame the bullpen fully for yesterday's game. We'll dive into that in a minute here, but they cannot hit, which is true. They hit 2 home runs yesterday, but that was the only way they scored runs. And at times where they don't score home runs, they get a bunch of hits, but they can't drive the runner in. And then on days where they hit home runs, they can't actually put runners on base for the home runs that matter. And of course, Santander got one at the top of the 8th. We're thinking, okay, Jimmy Garcia, Jeff Hoffman, they've been nails all year. You get them in against a very poor hitting Angels team who lost like 7 of their last 8 or 8 of their last 9, lost 7 or 8 in a row. They come out and they, snap their losing streak and win the game on a 5-run, whatever it was, bottom of the 8th. But the bigger problem here is that the bullpen is completely, gassed. And obviously the Jays for a while now have been relying on that bullpen because they haven't been able to hit whatsoever. However, one of the biggest problems with this is now in games where every game is so close that in games where you need your bullpen to lock in like they have for the first half of this, the start of the season, now they just can't. And Jimmy Garcia, that's back-to-back outings where he's been brutal. This is Jeff Hoffman's first bad outing of the year. He gave up 2 home runs, and I don't even want to blame Jeff Hoffman at all because it's the way that this team has been constructed, and the offense just isn't there. Cracks are already beginning to show for a Blue Jays bullpen that's been a constant bright spot this season. Outside of last weekend's series versus Cleveland, that's it. Many relief pitchers have been pushed to an unsustainable rate, which needs to change rather soon. And of course, we're going to have another video on this. I'm going to have another video on this pretty soon about the bullpen. But it's at the point now where you aren't only in a spot where you need the bullpen to be, good because of the lack of offense, but most importantly, you need the offense to step up. And that's something that needs to happen. And you can see here again, we look at the team, we look at the hitters that they have. Bichette needs to be better. I'm going to say every single person besides George Springer and maybe Alejandro Kirk as of late needs to be better. I mean, we saw Ernie Clement yesterday with a disastrous play in the field. You see, Miles Straw not able to move the runner from second to third in the 7th inning with no outs. Like, those are the things that need to happen, and they're not getting any production from their guys that they were hoping would take a step, whether that's Ernie Clement, whether that's Alan Roden, whether that's Miles Straw. Nathan Lucas has been very solid as well, but again, Nathan Lucas isn't going to be able to carry your team. The team is in big trouble, and they've hit rock bottom at this point. And looking at some of the bullpen, look at the high usage. Brendan Little has pitched 15 and 2/3 innings. Chad Green 15 innings. Jimmy Garcia 14 innings. Jeff Hoffman 16 innings in less games played. Of course, he can go multiple innings. This is terrible. This is a very bad sign. Of course, they've been very, very good, but that doesn't mean that this is a good thing. Obviously, pitching the bullpen this much means either your starters aren't good enough, which isn't really the case this year because it's mainly the back end guys, or B, your hitters the games are so close that you have to use your high leverage guys every single time. And I don't even want to add Mason Flaherty in this. He's been a huge bright spot, and they've had some bright spots, this year that have been able to help them, be very good. One of the problems is you don't have enough, offensive firepower to be able to get this team to where it needs to be, especially right now with this bullpen. And John Schneider came out and spoke about it. He said it's tough to ask the same guys pretty consistently at this point of the year to do that. Trying to be as careful as I can with Jimmy and Hoff and Little especially. We've got to add on runs. And of course, Brendan Little hasn't pitched a lot throughout his major league career, especially in one season as a relief pitcher, let alone 18 games with 15 innings pitched. It makes no sense for the team to be able to use him every single game and just run it down to the ground. And then, of course, Chad Green hasn't been great. Jimmy Garcia and Jeff Hoffman, they've been the two best relievers in baseball. And then all of a sudden, they've completely fallen off a cliff. And it's simply because, well, Jeff Hoffman hasn't fallen off a cliff. I'm not saying Jimmy Garcia has necessarily fallen off a cliff, but it's back-to-back. I mean, he blew a win a couple games ago. And then, of course, last game, he was one of the reasons that they lost that game, which, he also blew the save in that game as well. They were up 3-2, and then it ultimately was 3-3 before Jeff Hoffman came in and gave up a ton of runs. So they've hit rock bottom at this point. And you look at the schedule ahead, does it get better? Not really. You play a very good Mariners team, an okay Rays team, very good Tigers team, one of the best teams in baseball in the Padres, and then the Rays, and then the Rangers. So as much as I've been saying that May is an easier schedule than April as it pertains to especially this season being salvageable, and of course we're only in the first quarter of the year. There's lots of time left, but doesn't really matter at this point. The bullpen, if you continue at this rate, like Thomas Hall has been saying, like Jay Hughes has been saying, if they can't fix their offense, then their bullpen's going to fall. You're asking the starters to be perfect every game. You're asking John Schneider to be perfect every game. I don't want to put really any blame on John Schneider. He has to throw out one of Miles Straw, Alan Roden, any of these guys who can't really hit Ernie Clement every single day because of the way the team is built. And the help that's on the way is Spencer Turnbull. And Jose Ureta did a fine job yesterday. 4 2/3, give up 2 runs, just 1 home run in the first inning. Then was flawless the rest of the way. You didn't even have to use your high leverage guys to get until the 8th inning, but you weren't able to blow the game open because of how bad your offense has been. So they've hit rock bottom. You still have George Springer being 7th in 2025 rankings for right fielders, but regardless of that, you're going to need to pick it up very, very fast. And if you don't, you're going to be in serious trouble because they're falling in the AL East. Luckily, the AL East is very bad this year, whether that's the Red Sox, the Orioles, the Rays. The Yankees are the only decent team, and even they are off to a start where I don't think they're super happy about it because they've had a much easier schedule than the Jays. But I don't think even if the Jays, were playing much easier teams, that they would be a lot better off than they are right now because at the end of the day, the bullpen is absolutely gassed. They've hit rock bottom, and it's at the point where they need to lock in. But a couple things here before I wrap up. Yusei Kikuchi, he told us that they didn't receive an offer from the Jays this offseason, said he understood since Bound Francis had a great second half. Kikuchi said he loves Toronto and misses his time there. I mean, hindsight's obviously 2020. Probably would have looked to extend Kikuchi, but at the same time, I understand why they didn't. It's not like he's off to a great start either. Bound Francis is off to a worse start, but an interesting tidbit there. Obviously, Yusei Kikuchi has a lot of love in Toronto, and he loves Toronto as well. So let us know what your thoughts are on this. Obviously, the Jays are in, they're in pretty serious trouble here. Hit rock bottom, and hopefully they can come back soon.